we are really excited to be here. As I said, whoever's there are the right people. And so we're really happy to present on social, environment, and economic sustainability, and that this is based on data with the assessment that's brought to you through comparative agility. So I want to start with Steve, one of the presenters and originators of the assessment. And Steve's background or motivation for sustainability is on the danger of the South African penguins. And he can tell you much more about that. Then we have Claudia Melo, who is based in Brazil, and her heart is mainly on beating for regeneration. And so this is her interest, or what brought her to this topic. And I'm Jutta, and I'm a passionate scuba diver, which is what brought me to that topic. Oh, I see Maria is also a scuba diver. That's cool. Okay. I think what I would like to do next is I would like to ask you to answer in the chat how you think Agile and sustainability do actually connect. So if you find like a term that's something where you think like this is where you see a connection, and if you don't see any, then you can also write in the chat, I don't see a connection here. So we are waiting for you to fill the chat. So how do you think or feel Agile and sustainability connect? Compassion, that's probably the thing that brought us here. Continuous improvement. Anything else comes to your mind?
One thing that comes to my mind is the 8th principle of the Agile Manifesto. I guess I should have put that in the chat.
Yes, love, dealing with complexity. And the 8th principle, I believe, is on sustainable pace, humanity. Very good. So maybe you are here, include everyone, nice. Maybe you are here because you believe there is a connection, or there has to be a connection, and you just see it and want to know maybe how we can go forward with that. So yes, so sustainable pace is the 8th. I see that. Thank you. Okay, so we want to look into, so what is sustainability, then also broadly the connection to Agile, that would be so what, and then now what can you do? And so we are starting here, and I give the speaking handle over to Steve then.
Okay. Yes, we're gonna talk about what is it, so what does it mean, or what is the pattern, and then now what are we going to do, and we're going to start with what, and I guess it's my turn. Yes, so what is sustainability? And I mentioned the 8th principle. The 8th principle, if you don't remember exactly, the 12 principles of the Agile Manifesto are kind of like on the flip side of the values, turn the page over. And that 8th principle says Agile processes promote sustainable development. That sounds pretty big. And then it says sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace. Like, oh, they really kind of limited that one. And so what I want to talk about in the next, I'm going to set my timer to keep me honest. In about the next 5 minutes is I want to talk about how sustainable development is more than just about pace. I think it must be more than just about pace. The Beach Boys had that song before I was born. She'll have fun, fun, fun till her daddy takes the T-bird away. That's an example of something that's not sustainable. She's going to party, party, party until it's all gone and her daddy takes the T-bird away. So sustainability means whatever you're doing, making sure you have enough to keep doing it. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die is the old Epicurean philosophy, and that's probably not sustainable because you party, party until you die. Anyway, everybody does die. That's how this life works. But that's to think about sustainability. Now, actually, people, you could go back hundreds of years to find people talking about sustainability, but we talk more and more about it as time moves on. And in 1987, I was in college in 1987, so no time at all. It was just yesterday, right? But 1987, um, the World Commission on Economic and Environmental Development was formed. And this commission was trying to balance the needs of economic development with approaching environmental disasters. Now, that commission was headed up by Ms. Brundtland, who's former former Prime Minister of Norway. And we end up often just referring them to the Brundtland Commission. It's nice to be Prime Minister of Norway and the head of a commission, because then everybody says your name when they talk about it. But basically, the definition that they came up with in this commission was sustainable development. There's that word again. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So that means that as we consume resources, as we build products, we're not destroying what's available to the future. So sometimes I just refer to this definition of sustainability as consider the future, do it for the future, not just the present. And this is UN Commission, so they probably don't mean software coding when they say sustainable development. What do they mean? Well, they mean development is anything that improves our lot in life, makes our lot in life better. I think certainly coding can do that and should do that, but of course the UN is also talking about economic development and social development and the rest. Now, people have been talking about sustainability for a long time, but even more recently, say 2015, the UN released the global sustainable development goals, and there are 17 of them. They make a really nice poster, so I love that part of it. Very colorful. But if you look, they're on the screen now. If you look at the development goals, there are things like no hunger, good health, gender equality. Those are social issues, but also clean air and water, abundant life in the oceans, peace and justice. I've mixed that up. Clean air, abundant life in the oceans is environmental, and then also peace and justice goes under social more than likely, and then also industry and innovation and improving industrial and product growth and things like that. So also economic. Now, why is that? Why can these 17 goals be split into 3 pillars? Well, we often talk about the 3 pillars of sustainable development. That's people, planet, and prosperity. Or the social aspect is people. When you're considering the social aspect, you're talking about aiming for equality, health, and livability. When you're talking about the planet, you're talking about protecting the planet, making sure the planet does exist for the future tomorrow. And the third pillar is, we often called it profit, but I noticed that I'm going to always say his name wrong, I always get it wrong, John Elkington, who actually kind of came up with this 3-pillar concept, or that's how I understand it. We originally talked about profit, but he started to talk about prosperity, which I like a little bit better. Profit implies that it's all about the company. Prosperity, to me, is a little bit more. It's not just that the company is doing well on their bottom line, but it's that the lives of everyone around the company, the customers, and the community that the community is in is also prosperous. Now, these are 3 pillars, but I find they carry equal weight. And so it's when all 3 pillars come together that we have sustainability. They are interrelated. You mentioned complexity, which also talks about interconnection and entanglement. With this in our incredibly, wickedly complex environment, changes in the prosperity side pull on changes in the environmental side and changes in the social side. You can see there's a social network melting down maybe right now, and you can see where right now anyway the prosperity of the owners of that company is probably suffering because they have not considered the social and the environmental needs. So decisions on one side pull on the other. But not only that, they also push on each other. So originally we hoped, I think, that these three pillars could be the triple bottom line and we could somehow account for balancing them out with accounting. It turns out we haven't found the accounting. I would love it if we did, but we haven't found the accounting. But what it does turn out is that when you bring your decisions closer to the people, the community, to the environment, that it does help the prosperity side. So changes on the social side tend to have a positive impact on the changes in the profit side, as well as changes on the environmental side have a positive impact on the profit side. And of course, in the coming times, if we destroy our planet, if we have always more pandemics and ecological disasters, that's not going to look very good for our prosperity either. So finally, just want to wrap that up. I've gone just slightly over time, I think, but wouldn't it be great if we had a way to start talking about these three pillars and keep talking about it and measuring it, because Agile does promote sustainable development. And I want to expand that development to not be just coding, but the kinds of development that the Brundtland Commission is talking about. And I just want to keep in mind that it can't just be about pace. And I think it really, well, maybe, yeah. For me, it never was, well, what am I saying? I used to think it was about pace, but I'm sure now it wasn't just about pace. So that's what I really want to say. And yeah, let's hear what we've got from there.
All right, Steve. So now I'm transitioning to talk a little bit about how that Steve was explaining, this interaction between the three pillars, how they pull and push, and they are actually ultra interconnected, but we in some way we like to divide stuff, we like to have short-term solutions. So we think that we can separate, for example, economy and environment. That's impossible. Social from economic. So the truth is, now we are trying to reconnect these things that are actually they were always connected, and how the digital world interact with these pillars. So let's say that maybe software comes to the rescue. Maybe software is helping aligning the three pillars. So let's get an example. We have ebooks that are enabling us not killing more trees, and at the same time, they are helping us disseminating more information to people with less effort. So we might think, okay, ebooks are a great example of how technology is helping us to better align the three pillars, to be more sustainable, or even attending virtual meetings like this, like ours. We haven't moved from our places. We are here. We didn't need to. We could save energy on transportation. So this is one side of the truth, because sustainability is not a simple matter. There's always another side of the truth. And then, Jutta, we can transition. There's always another side of the truth. The truth...
I just put in like the question mark, because software to the rescue is not really true. Maybe you can also question that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So from the one hand, on the one hand, we can see how good technology can be to help us solving or tackling or sustaining our presence in the planet. But we always have the other side of the story. And I think sustainability is always about taking care of many, many dimensions and points of view. So the other side of the story, what we can see here, is that ICT, information and communication technology, consumes a lot of energy, way more than we think, and it's rising. So this is, for example, a forecast that by 2030, in 8 years, ICT activity will probably consume up to 21% of the overall global energy consumption. So the overall demand that we have in the planet, 21% of it will be used by ICT. This is a worst case scenario, but it still is there, and it's in 8 years, this forecast. And keep in mind that the use of energy per citizen in developed countries is 80 times higher than a citizen in a developing country. So the patterns of consumption of energy across countries is super different and is rising. And this brings other challenges. How we are going to produce this energy. How sustainable is this producing, and all other effects that come from this activity, of ICT activity. So this is the one side. The other side, or one of the sides that software and ICT altogether bring, that is a challenge for us to keep a balance. So it's not always easy. Another example that I can show, I can discuss with you, is that is also negative impact of software, is the electronic waste. So think on how often you needed to exchange your smartphone because it became too slow, or it was not running properly anymore. You had no space to keep all your files and send your messages super quick. What we do with this hardware, what we usually do, we discard. We don't think about, searching out there. Let me try to find a leaner software that will keep this hardware here with me. We just discard, buy another one. And I would say that companies usually are relying on this. They are relying that we do exactly this, that we buy new hardware to accommodate the new software that companies are producing that have way more features that bring a lot of, easiness for our lives. And you might think, okay, but this is hardware, it's not software, but software generates this behavior, is generating, the way we design software is generating this behavior we have with the hardware. And we generate tons and tons of waste, of hardware waste, what we do with this hardware, right? So these are some examples of the other side of software in the sustainability aspect, the negative aspect that we need to take care and that we need to improve, diminish, or solve. But sustainability is never about solving, it's about this dynamic balance. So we need to try to find the balance. So I'm going to share with you some practices, some examples where organizations, groups of people, developers, companies, they are trying to keep this balance in some way, or not much. I'm going to show some examples to make it concrete for you, how we can tackle sustainability in the digital world. So the first example is more related to the environment, right? So it's an example from Google. I'm not a super fan of Google, but this is a good example, as we have good and bad and everything, right? This is a good example coming from them. They discovered the problem that they were consuming too much energy on their data centers in 2007. They started to work on it. And 10 years later, 2017, they announced they were running already on 100% renewable energy, renewable sources of energy. Now, this doesn't mean they were sustainable, because when you are at least consuming energy from renewable sources, but you don't know the speed between how fast you consume energy and how fast nature is able to, regenerate. So still, you're not sustainable, probably. So they know that, and they started, moving further and further. So their goal by 2030 is to be running only on carbon-free energy, which means, what is carbon-free or net zero? We usually hear a lot of net zero. Means that whatever you're consuming, on their case, they are consuming energy from renewable sources. These renewable sources they are consuming, they are committed that the balance between the carbon emitted in this energy production and consumption, the carbon that is emitted is the same amount of the carbon removed from the atmosphere. So they are committing themselves not only to use renewable energy, but to make sure that the carbon emissions are in balance in production and removal from the environment. That is a pretty pretty bold goal, and for sure is paving the way for other companies to follow and try things like that, and to know for experience. And that's good that they have money to, you know, run a lot of research, and this is good for society. So this is one example. The other example, now more in the social pillar, is from, I don't know, you think you can move your, not, I'm sorry, it's not social, it's economic. It's the economic pillar. Okay, so in the economic pillar, another example that we can see how a group of developers can think, discuss, reflect on sustainability and make a difference, right? So some developers of Chat, it's a well-known company, right, that produces configuration management tool with the same name. They were like investigating how our users are using our products. In this process of investigation, they discovered that one customer, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement from the US, the ICE, was using their software in the activities at the border between US and Mexico. They were using the software for running detention centers to implement family separation policies, which means whenever a family was trying to immigrate illegally, they would separate parents and kids and, you know, let them separate and then detented. I don't know if this is the right word in English. And the software was enabling that. Chef's software was enabling these operations. Well, the developers had an ethical issue here. We don't want to build software to help organizations, government, for example, being able to separate families, no matter what the immigration policy is. We don't want to see this happening. And they started protesting to their management. In the beginning, management was, okay, this is a big contract, let's see how things go. But then the issue became bigger and bigger because of politics, the way US was, you know, dealing with immigration. And then the case was becoming really big. And then finally, Chef's management decided to not to renew the contract with ICE because of ethics, right? So ethical issues matter, purpose matters, well-being of people matter, right? This was an example of how a group of people developing software can think of sustainability in this related to the social pillar. And finally, another example. So from the 3 pillars, I'm going through the 3 pillars. The last example, 2 examples I wanted to show. I'm saying all the time, I'm sorry, I said again social pillar, right, in the last slide, but it was economic. I don't know, confusing myself. Now I'm going to talk about the social. So 2 examples. These 2 examples come from Twitter. So they became a little bit like famous because people were discussing them in the networks. The first one, very simple, a user that couldn't put her surname in this system because her surname was like 2 characters, and the developers didn't consider that when they were creating the product. They didn't consider that in some cultures you can have surnames with 2 characters, right? So as a user, you cannot create your account because of that, for example. Another example, and then I'm going to discuss both from a social lens, is where these 2 guys, again, was shared in Twitter. These 2 guys were in a call, and they were testing together virtual backgrounds, and look to what happened when they were testing. So as you can see in the left image, what happened when he applied his virtual background. So the developers of this solution, the virtual backgrounds, they didn't consider that a darker skin doesn't reflect the light in the same way as a white skin, right? So they didn't think about that. They didn't design the software. They didn't test to make this work for people with dark color. So in these 2 examples, we have faults, like very, clear faults of solutions that don't provide value for a large group of people. And why this is happening is it's because we are bad or bad people. No, we think that because this is happening because teams are not diverse enough to take different perspectives. And this happens a lot because we usually like people like us and organizations. And when we are in organizations that don't pay attention to this, we usually hire more and more people like us, and we are always thinking the same way. So the less diverse we are, the less diverse will be our solutions and the value they can provide. So this is an example from a social perspective that first, we should be thinking about software that provide value for society. And to achieve that, we need to have diverse organizations that can actually have a diverse perspective. So these are 3 examples of how we can think of sustainability in the software in the digital world. And I think now we can move, right, Jutta?
Exactly. So the question remains now, so what does this all have to do with Agile? Because we were looking at what sustainability is, where it comes from, what are the greater goals, and also kind of examples about the connection to IT. And yes, you can already say Agile, at least at its core, is about developing software and IT, and therefore there's the connection, but there's actually more than that. I think that Agile made a promise. And so the 3 of us were looking at what does it mean, making a promise. So for example, if you look at Scrum Alliance, it says on a mission to create Agile workplaces that are joyful, prosperous, and sustainable. Then there is the Agile Alliance. So looking at really our biggest corporations or nonprofit organizations here. And the Agile Alliance says through the last 2 decades, members like you have helped make work more effective, humane, and sustainable by applying the Agile mindset and methods. Now, I know both organizations had sustainable for quite a time on their mission and vision. And probably way back when they put that in, they had in mind what Steve was pointing out, sustainable pace. However, we also know that both organizations are now looking more into the new definition of sustainability or the current understanding of it. And I just want to dive into what the Agile Alliance says here. So they are really, if you will, thinking about, well, they are looking into all of these 3 terms. So the effective, humane, and sustainable. And we are now looking at what they are saying in terms of sustainable. And this is what they say. So more sustainable, and the point that's important for us is that they say working to create positive economic, social, and environmental outcomes, which is exactly what Steve had gone over with you, and where Claudia brought these examples of the 3 pillars, which are in all of these 3 dimensions. So we think these organizations really mean it now. That also means we need to probably be more active here. And there's another thing I want to point out, which is if you think about a team on organizations saying they are agile, then this actually comes with an expectation, which is perhaps a hidden expectation, but there is an expectation. Just imagine a company saying we are agile, and then you find out they are not inclusive. I bet you think, or maybe ask them, oh, I thought you're agile. Or if you find out they're not paying fairly, same thing, you would say, well, I thought you're agile. So that doesn't fit. So this is kind of a hidden expectation that comes along. And when actually this, my co-author of my latest book, John Buck and I were looking at company-wide agility, we were also looking at the various values for company-wide agility, which are these, but also then what do they mean in terms of those hidden expectations. And so for those hidden expectations, if we look, for example, into transparency, it means make the company's actions transparent both internally and externally. And there was this great example Claudia provided from Google, and I'm completely with you there. I like them and I don't like them. And one of the reasons, even with that positive example, is, not sure if you have seen that, but the source was a white paper from Google. And I know that the Ministry of Environmental Affairs in Germany is trying to get the data on it to verify if their claim is really true or not. However, they are not making that data transparent. And this is now for at least 4 years happening like that. So transparency, not so much. Then self-organization, it's about the understanding that a company is not an island, but it's embedded in a global network, and therefore shaping and living from that ecosystem it lives in. So together with the other companies, societal institutions, and so on. But it's kind of the thing, we cannot live at the cost of our surroundings here. Then if we look at continuous learning, then it is really, well, that's kind of, especially the three of us now looking into that topic for quite some time, we just figure there's so much happening. And so we need to share that more, and we have to keep learning about what's possible in terms of sustainability, and we need to actually do that. So it is about learning continuously from and with society in helping to make the whole world a better place, hopefully. And finally, constant customer focus. Actually, I want to summarize that with kind of my favorite, claim, which is that we really need to think, when we talk about customers, we need to think about that maybe the planet is a stakeholder as well. So that there are priorities, there are ways how we implement stuff and so on, and shifting our conversation with the planet as a stakeholder in mind. So that's kind of from the value perspective and from that hidden expectation perspective, if you will. So now what does that mean to us? What can we really do? What are the actions that we can provide? And there are basically two ways we can start acting if we have Agile and sustainability in mind. And the first one we want to point out is sustainability by Agile, which means we use Agile practices and mindset to increase sustainability. There's, I want to share one example which was implemented by Stephen So we were supporting this year a nonprofit organization in the environmental sector using Agile practices, mindsets, tools. In that case, we were using, for example, event storming, story mapping, open space, so kind of our classic tools that we have at hand to help them to come up with a new campaign. So we can just help them doing that. Another example is from a colleague of ours, Nicole Bellos. She's in the Netherlands, and she acted as a Scrum Master for a nonprofit organization which is called Hack Your Future. And Hack Your Future has the idea of supporting refugees for showing their IT skills so they have an easier way in getting a job, which is sometimes difficult because they don't bring their certificates and whatever they are losing while fleeing the country they are coming from. So it is really giving them the possibility to show, like, this is what we know and maybe you want to hire us. And in this case, it was Nicole helping a group of them as a Scrum Master. And then there was an additional really great thing that those refugees actually decided to create a food saver app. So it's also kind of that pillar was part of it. But this is, again, using what we know, practices, mindset, and help increasing sustainability. So that was sustainability by Agile. Then there is sustainability in Agile, which is we are using sustainability to guide our actions and outcomes in Agile development. So which is also kind of what Claudia was sharing with Chef. So ensuring that the product that we are creating is along the lines of sustainability, which it really wasn't. Well, it didn't improve the life and prospects of everyone everywhere, at least not for the people at the Mexican border, in that example. Another example, which is maybe on a much smaller scale, is you can also think about having in your definition of done a verification that the carbon footprint is at least not increasing with every release that you are delivering or finalizing here. So this is kind of another thing, using everything that sustainability comes with as acceptance criteria for whatever you are doing. And this goes in the direction also, well, both of them, sustainability by and in Agile, but goes into the direction what that assessment is for. And so now my co-presenters, be ready not to be surprised. These would be like examples, statements you can think about and reflect about if you think of how sustainable are you with your team. So it's something you will do with your team. For example, you can ask yourself if the team knows the full lifetime cost of the product in terms of social, environmental, and economic capital. There are statements like that which maybe make you think, oh, no idea. And this is actually where it gets started, because we need to ask those questions, thinking of transparency maybe. So to learn what's going on here. Or the other statement, the next one is the team prevents discrimination, targeting, or disrespecting of team members. We see more often that teams say, well, yeah, that's kind of what we are doing, because a lot on the social side is under discussion, especially in the Agile community, for quite some time. So we have improved a lot in the past years. Then the third one, my favorite, well, kind of favorite, what I shared before, we prioritize the planet as one of our stakeholders. And moving on to the last example statement, the product informs users before automatically launching or running tasks in the background that may not be used. Ever thought of that? Not sure. So these are just example statements. And what I want to do now is I want to share the outcome of a bigger team where we have run that assessment with. And so we can take a quick look at how that then looks like. And let me see. So we are here. And I don't know, is this big enough? I guess, yeah, because we're all sitting in front of the computer, so it's probably kind of good. So this is an outcome again from like a team, and that was bigger doing this. And this is a very typical picture that we are seeing, that, as I said, social is most often quite higher than the other aspects, because we are talking about this for quite some time. There you will also find stuff like privacy, security, also topics we keep discussing for some time. Then more typical maybe or not, economic is kind of 3.36, and the same for holistic. Environmental, oh my God, we haven't really started much to think about this. And just in order to get an idea what kind of statements are in there, we are maybe diving into this right now. And there, I don't know, I'm just picking out some of the things. So what we are seeing here is kind of one of the big points. 2.11, as the team continuously improves the sustainability of their working environment. It seems people are not even thinking about that. Or another thing that's kind of low is that one. Well, it's maybe, no, there's one that's even lower. I just see that. But let's take that one. The energy being used in the office is renewable. I can imagine that this is so low because most of the people say, I have no clue. I don't know. And so these are things we need to do. We need to ask in our companies, what is actually the energy we are using? Where does it come from? And just by asking those questions, I believe we can make a difference, really. And because I just figured this one is the lowest, probably 1.32, which says the team monitors the carbon footprint of the system, which it doesn't. Now let's maybe look at one that's much higher here. The company monitors and proactively seeks to reduce waste products. I see this more and more that, for example, there are recycle bins and so on, that they are looking in the work environment to also think of what kind of waste are we actually creating, and what is it that's really that we can recycle, or maybe not creating that waste at all. So maybe we also want to look into one other way of showing this, and then we move on, I guess. So you can also look at the heat map, which I find particularly interesting if you're working with a team, and maybe we also dive into one of them. Let's go for social here. And you see that here, although it looks kind of good, it is completely distributed. So people might say, well, it's not applicable, I don't know. And some say, oh, right, we are doing this. This is all fine. So this means you really need to talk in your team. So why is it that it's deviating so much and spread all over the place? And that's also helping, again, to make the information that's out there way more transparent. So it helps everyone to get a better understanding. Where are we? And also, what is it that we can do next? And with that, I believe we kind of come to a closure and hope for great questions. So the most important thing that we think is happening with this assessment is that you start changing your conversations. And also, because it's on the team level, it makes acting on those challenges more practical. We often see that people say, oh yeah, sustainability, great topic, and we really need to do more, but then that topic is so overwhelming and you don't know where to get started. And so the assessment can help you to look into the one or the other point, and by changing your conversations for increasing sustainability. And now we hope for your questions.